Mountain City is a small town in Tennessee where everyone knows each other, and rare events quickly become the topic of conversation. It is rare for anything to break the mold here, but one story has shaken this place to its core. It began with a family that seemed normal, if not exemplary. Behind the facade of care and love, however, something had been building up for years and finally erupted in a devastating way. No one could have imagined what the seemingly harmless girl from the house next door was capable of until it was too late. Janelle Potter was born on January 17, 1982, in a suburb of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. She was the youngest of two daughters born to Marvin and Barbara Potter. Her father was a former Marine, and her mother worked as a secretary in a private company. The family lived a normal life, but the parenting methods in the Potter household laid the foundation for future problems from the very beginning. The older daughter, Christy, was 6 years older than Janelle. The relationship between the sisters was strained, largely due to how their parents treated each of them. Janelle was born prematurely and had health problems since childhood, which led her parents to overprotect her. They focused entirely on their younger daughter, watching over her every step of the way and letting her get away with almost anything. She was never truly punished, and they also tried to ensure that she always felt comfortable and happy. From an early age, Christy was forced to help her parents care for her sister, fulfilling her wishes and enduring her moods. Her parents expected obedience from her and encouraged this behavior in every way. When Christy began to express her dissatisfaction with having to spend all her time caring for her sister, her parents reacted negatively. They scolded and punished her for it. Over time, Janelle became the center of family life. Her parents praised her, gave her affectionate nicknames, surrounded her with attention, and suggested that she was special. At the same time, their control over her life became increasingly tight. Attempts were made to protect her from anything that might be difficult or stressful. This led to Janelle growing up isolated from the real world, without the opportunity to learn from her own mistakes or make her own decisions. She never had to deal with the consequences of her actions, as everything was decided for her by the adults. At the same time, the older daughter practically disappeared from her parents' sight. Christy remained in the background, even though she did well in school, played sports, and danced successfully. Her efforts were ignored. Her parents showed no interest in her life and took her successes for granted. She felt invisible and unnecessary in her own family. Thus, clear priorities developed in the Potter family from childhood. The younger daughter received all the attention, support, and care, while the older daughter was left to fend for herself. This laid the foundation for the events that later shook the entire town. From early childhood, the younger daughter was aware of her special position in the family. She quickly realized that the same rules didn't apply to her as to the others and began testing the boundaries of what was permissible. It turned out that there were simply no boundaries for her. Janelle lied regularly and faced no consequences. If she intentionally damaged or broke something, she blamed her older sister, and everyone believed her every word. Christy was punished without any attempt to clarify the situation. When Janelle turned 10, she was diagnosed with diabetes. After that, her parents' already excessive overprotectiveness crossed all boundaries. Now they literally controlled her every move. Her mother, Barbara, played the main role, while her father mostly tacitly supported her decisions. Janelle wasn't allowed to play on the street, go for a walk alone, or be left unattended even for a short time. When she started school, the girl began to have problems. She didn't understand the material, didn't work hard, and behaved passively. The teachers considered her lazy and inattentive. Her parents refused to acknowledge this and blamed everything on her health and unfair treatment by the teachers. No one scolded her for her poor grades. In the family, studying wasn't considered important. Janelle also struggled with her classmates. She often got into conflicts, lied, complained, provoked trouble, and then blamed others. Her parents regularly came to school, argued with the teachers, and demanded special treatment for their daughter. They were convinced that she deserved a special approach and that someone else was always to blame. Most teachers considered Janelle a difficult and extremely spoiled child. Some even insisted on suspending or expelling her because of her frequent tantrums and outbursts. But her parents ignored all the warnings. For them, their daughter was perfect, and everyone else was to blame. Her older sister, Christy, graduated with honors, was accepted to a prestigious college, and at the same time took a job so she could move away from her parents and no longer be dependent on them. Her parents paid no attention to her successes. All their energy went into caring for their youngest daughter. Christy was tired of being constantly blamed, and after the move, she almost completely cut off contact with her family. Over time, Janelle became increasingly withdrawn and conflicted. She couldn't communicate normally, behaved selfishly, was irritable, and short-tempered. She appeared almost everywhere with her mother, who picked fights at every opportunity and defended her daughter's interests. The Potter family aroused the anger of those around her. They were considered strange. Some felt sorry for Janelle, believing that her mother had harmed her with her excessive care. Most, however, simply tried to stay away, avoiding them. Janelle finished school with poor grades. Further education was out of the question. Barbara told her she didn't have to go anywhere or look for a job because her parents would take care of everything. Janelle was perfectly fine with that. She sat in front of the television or computer all day, and no one restricted her. Even as an adult, her parents still had complete control over her. She didn't drive, didn't meet friends, didn't go on dates, and had almost no contact with other people. She had no experience making decisions. They were always leading her by the hand and telling her what to do. She didn't understand how normal life worked, and couldn't imagine that every action could have consequences. Barbara and Marvin justified everything with concern for their daughter's illness, but Janelle herself didn't want to change anything either. She was content with everything. They didn't demand anything of her. They did everything for her, and she had gotten used to it. Her parents constantly praised her and defended her against all accusations. The family moved to Mountain City, a small town in Tennessee with just over 500 residents. It was a quiet and peaceful place where everyone knew each other and tried to live peacefully together. The town seemed ideal for a quiet life. The Potters bought a well-kept house in a quiet neighborhood. The new neighbors greeted them with interest. They came by to introduce themselves, offered their help, and tried to establish contact. Everyone was curious about who these new people were. At first, everything went quietly. Barbara got to know her neighbors quite quickly and even became friends with some of them. Over time, however, the people around her began to notice strange behavior throughout the family. At first glance, the adult daughter seemed well-mannered, friendly, if somewhat withdrawn. But if someone dared to contradict her or made a comment to her, she would immediately scream or throw a tantrum. Her mother immediately took her side and defended her, without even addressing the conflict. Her father, Marvin, often went to local bars and cafes, where he drank a lot and loved to tell stories from his time in the army. The stories sounded exciting and heroic, but it soon became clear that he made up many of them or greatly exaggerated them. Despite this, he was treated kindly and became known as a local storyteller. Janelle also tried to make friends but didn't know how to interact with people. So she decided to attract attention in other ways. She began to complain about her poor health. She said she was seriously ill, mentioned various serious illnesses, including cancer, and claimed the doctors had given her little time left. People felt sorry for her because they couldn't believe someone could make such things up. But over time, the stories changed. Janelle kept inventing new illnesses, and it became obvious that she was simply lying. When social networks became popular, Janelle created accounts on several platforms. She almost never left home and spent many hours a day online. This became her primary means of communicating with the outside world. Feeling more secure online, she began to build a fictitious life for herself. Janelle filled her pages with false facts. She claimed interesting hobbies and fictitious achievements, and recounted an eventful life. She found photos of parties, concerts, and events online and posted them on her site, deliberately choosing images where faces were difficult to recognize. She edited the photos, added captions, and described events that had supposedly taken place. Sometimes she wrote long posts about non-existent evenings that seemed believable. Gradually, Janelle gained many followers, especially among those who didn't know her personally. They had the impression that she led an active life, was wealthy, had fun, and was surrounded by friends. She sent hundreds of friend requests and soon had several thousand followers. Her posts were actively liked, commented on, and praised. She enjoyed all of this. At some point, she realized that this fictional picture was missing only one thing: a love story. So she created another account, this time under a man's name. The pattern was the same. She searched for photos online, edited them, and published them. This fake profile became, so to speak, her boyfriend. She posted in his name, sent herself compliments and cards, and left comments in his name. Many believed she really had a thoughtful and romantic young man. Some even wrote in the comments how lucky she was to have such a boyfriend. In addition to the usual social networks, Janelle registered in a local online chat that functioned like a forum. There, the townspeople discussed local news, exchanged opinions, and wrote anonymously or under a pseudonym. Potter occasionally visited it but wrote almost nothing. This platform was of less interest to her, as she couldn't invent stories about herself there. The locals knew who she was, and in reality, she didn't live up to the impression she made online. Janelle was almost 30 when she found her first real friend. Her name was Tracy Green. She was born in Mountain City, worked in a pharmacy, was intelligent, and sociable. Thanks to this friendship, Janelle began to socialize at least a little. They went shopping together, walked in the park, sat in cafes, and talked on the phone every day. Janelle's parents didn't mind this friendship and were even happy that their daughter had found a friend. Tracy often stayed at the Potter's home, and the family welcomed her. Janelle enjoyed this company. For the first time, she didn't have to arouse sympathy or make something up to get attention. Tracy soon began introducing Janelle to her friends and relatives. Communication was no longer limited to the two of them. Now they often met in a group. Among the new acquaintances was Tracy's brother, Billy Payne. He was young, educated, attractive, and easygoing. Thanks to his keen sense of humor, he quickly became the center of attention in any social gathering. Janelle was very attracted to him. For the first time in her life, she truly liked someone. But Billy didn't reciprocate her feelings. She didn't know how to flirt or act casually, so she behaved pushily, demanding attention, and becoming angry and extremely emotional when she didn't receive it. This behavior repelled him. He found his sister's friend strange and stopped contacting her. Janelle began obsessively stalking Billy, sending him private messages and constantly being wherever he was. A month and a half after they met, he officially announced that he was dating a woman named Billy John Hayworth and introduced her to his friends as his girlfriend. From that moment on, he hardly appeared in his old clique anymore and spent all his free time with Billie Jean. Janelle couldn't accept that he hadn't chosen her and began behaving like a petulant teenager who wasn't getting what he wanted. She demanded that Tracy intervene and make enemies of her brother with his new girlfriend. Tracy refused, which led to a fight between the friends. Later, rumors spread around town about a possible wedding between Billy and Billie Jean. Everyone talked about how well they were suited. The residents even shared their opinions in the town chat. Most were genuinely happy for the two of them, everyone except Janelle. She considered this a personal loss and began plotting revenge. Later, Janelle reconciled with Tracy and asked her to help her with her personal life. Tracy agreed and introduced her cousin Jamie Curd to Janelle. He was around 30, worked as a programmer, and lived nearby. Despite his age, he was aloof, somewhat strange, and not particularly popular with women. At first glance, he and Janelle might have been a good match, but she had completely different goals. Janelle didn't intend to start a serious relationship with Jamie. Instead, she resorted to a ruse. She invited him to her home several times, ostensibly to help him with his computer work, telling her parents each time that he was an excellent professional she couldn't live without. Soon, Barbara and Marvin began inviting Jamie to lunch, and afterward, he often came to their house. After some time, Janelle confessed to her mother that she liked Jamie, and after her parents' approval, she announced that they were now a couple. From that moment on, they appeared everywhere together. In fact, she had no real feelings for him, but only hoped it would make Billy jealous. She deliberately came to Tracy's family dinner with Jamie, hoping to show a new side of herself, but nothing went according to plan. During dinner, Billy unexpectedly announced that he and Billy John were getting married. What's more, Billy John was already expecting a child, and they didn't want to postpone the wedding. For Janelle, this was a blow. All her fantasies and hopes were shattered, and instead, a vengeful and destructive scenario began to develop in her mind. A few days later, insulting rumors about Billie Jean spread through the town chat topics. Someone wrote that she had allegedly led a dissolute life, had many affairs, was being treated for sexually transmitted diseases, and had now decided to trap Billy with her pregnancy, even though, according to the anonymous author, the child wasn't even his. Of course, none of this had anything to do with reality, but in a small town, such rumors spread quickly. Some brought up the topic again and again and wouldn't let it die down. Insults, accusations, and hostile comments towards Billie Jean followed. Despite all the commotion, Billy didn't believe a word of it. He continued to support Billie Jean and tried to protect her from the attacks. When it became clear that the online discussions were pointless, the couple contacted the police and filed a complaint for defamation and harassment. At the time, they didn't know who exactly was behind all these attacks. Although the participants in the city chat wrote under pseudonyms, it was no problem for the police to find out who was behind the offensive postings. After it became clear that Janelle was responsible for spreading the lies, Billy and his girlfriend filed a lawsuit and obtained a court order prohibiting Potter from approaching them or contacting them. But that wasn't the end of the matter. It was just the beginning. Janelle created several fake social media accounts from which she sent threats to herself. She then showed them to her parents and said she feared for her life because Billy and Billie Jean were supposedly planning to kill her. Her parents believed their daughter without hesitation and reported the incident to the police. However, the investigation revealed that all the threats had been written by Janelle herself. Despite this, her mother and father continued to believe her version of events and ignored the investigators' findings. The hostility between Janelle and the couple, against whom she harbored a grudge, escalated into a protracted conflict. Every encounter on the street ended in an argument, insults, and mutual accusations. All parties repeatedly contacted the police, demanding that contact be limited. This continued for almost a year. From the outside, it seemed as if the tension had subsided. In fact, Janelle had simply changed her strategy and decided to avoid open conflict in preparation for more serious action. Around the same time, Janelle's mother Barbara received emails from a man named Chris, who claimed to be a CIA operative. He claimed to have information about an alleged assassination attempt on Janelle, which Billy and Billie Jean were behind. According to him, the Secret Services had no reason yet to arrest the couple, but the situation was very serious. The emails were sent not only to Barbara. Later, Chris also began writing to Marvin and Jamie Curd. He assured them that Janelle's life was in danger and that she could be killed if urgent action was not taken. The agent repeatedly emphasized that everything had to remain secret and that it was pointless to wait for help from the police. Within a few months, Chris managed to gain the trust of Janelle's parents and her boyfriend. They wrote to each other regularly and discussed how to save Janelle. Later, the agent announced that the couple were apparently looking for a hitman to eliminate Janelle and that immediate action was necessary. He sent instructions detailing exactly what to do. On the morning of January 31, 2012, Marvin and Jamie arrived at the house where Billy and Billie Jean lived with their 8-month-old son Tyler. The family was still asleep. The men entered through a ground floor window and went into the bedroom. Marvin had a gun with him. He walked over to the bed and shot Billy in the head at close range. Billy died at the scene. The shot woke Billie Jean. Not understanding what was happening, she ran to the nursery to protect her child, but the attackers followed her. She managed to hold her son in her arms, but was then shot twice in the head. The young woman died at the scene. Fortunately, the child was unharmed. After the attack, the men fled the house. Neighbors who heard the shots called the police. Officers arrived quickly and found a horrific scene. In one room lay the body of a man with a gunshot wound to the head. In the other, a small child sat next to the bloodied body of his mother. The first clues immediately led the police to the Potters. Given the long-standing conflict between the families, the officers quickly focused on them. Initially, Barbara and Marvin denied any involvement, but after interrogation, they admitted to the agents' messages and their involvement. They also mentioned Jamie Curd, who they believed had helped protect Janelle. A technical review of the IP addresses revealed that the CIA agent emails had been sent from a computer located directly in the Potters' home. The sender was Janelle herself. Her story collapsed when the technical evidence came to light. Nevertheless, she continued to insist on her version, but no one believed her anymore. All four were arrested. Jamie Curd agreed to a deal with the prosecution and described in detail how the murder had unfolded. He claimed that he sincerely believed he was saving Janelle and had not known that Agent Chris was a fictional character. He was sentenced to 25 years in prison. Marvin Potter was found guilty of double murder and sentenced to 2 life sentences without parole. Barbara was convicted of aiding and abetting a crime. She, too, was sentenced to life imprisonment. The main perpetrator, Janelle, who was confident of her impunity and believed she had everyone wrapped around her finger, was also sentenced to life imprisonment. She had planned the double murder in advance and decided to sacrifice the people closest to her who trusted her unconditionally. Thanks for watching, and take care.